Thank you very much, Lena, for agreeing to join us for this evening. This is the first in a series of webinars that we'll be sort of recording and streaming live online. So it's myself and Graham Ellis. I'm not sure if you want to give a brief introduction of yourself, Graham.
Yeah, hi, I'm Graham. I've known Viv for a few years now. He turned me down for a job before, and then we worked together on my last assignment with Viv on a separate team, and I love his attitude to QA because it's very much like mine, but occasionally we disagree, but that's cool. And I loved Lena's essay. It's a subject after my own heart, so I was really keen to get her for the first one in the series. So that's me.
Yeah, for those that don't know me as well, I'm Viv Richards. I'm a QA, currently working with Equal Experts, and I turned Graham down for a role, fantastic role. But many years later, we managed to meet up again and work together, which is a pleasure. It sadly came to an end recently. So the plan for this evening is that we're going to spend the next 30 minutes discussing Lena's contribution to Around the World with 80 Software Testers, the free LeanPub ebook. And then we'll have just 5 minutes sort of with some quick fire questions and just a bit of fun. And if you have any questions, there's a chat window down on the middle of the screen. You can click that and ask away. People will be unmuted at the end, just there's no interruptions. So Lena, or Liana, is a developer who found testing and stayed. She loves facilitating workshops, mentoring, speaking at conferences on topics related to quality, software in general. And she believes in striving for continuous improvement by always challenging ourselves, our assumptions, and the way things are done. And we really, really are pleased that Liana's agreed to join us, because it was one of the essays that myself and Graham really sort of connected to, and we wanted to find out a lot more about it. So we're really pleased to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Would you like to give any other sort of introduction? I know I've just introduced you a bit there, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I think I sounded really smart in that presentation. Sound like an awesome person. But yeah, I mean, in short, I've been doing software development for 20 plus years, half of it in development and half of it in quality oriented roles. And my latest role is actually in engineering management. So I've switched back to what you call the dark side for the time being, which is interesting.
That's cool. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions to sort of relate to your article, if you don't mind us asking. So I guess generally sort of, you mentioned you had a pretty long career in development. How long were you sort of in that development space for?
It's somewhere between 10 and 12 years, depending on how you count, and the years kind of blur into each other. But somewhere, say 11 years as what we called software developers. So basically we were doing everything. We weren't just code monkeys. We were doing everything from requirement work to training users, basically.
Yeah. Did you always aspire to be a software developer then? Or was that your sort of your plan?
No, I was going to be a teacher. Okay. But then I realized that the career for teachers weren't really very exciting, kind of low salary, and they seemed to be working constantly. So I was looking into what other areas can I try, and I've always been interested in computers. So I took a kind of a 3-year bachelor program, but I was never expecting programming to be the thing that actually turned into a career. But I mean, I liked it. I was good at it.
The particular areas? Oh, sorry, Graham.
That's okay. So what prompted the switch then? So obviously there's a dev mindset, and then there's a QA test mindset. Did you notice any cracks appearing in the dev approach as you were going along? What prompted the switch?
I honestly think that I always had the user perspective. Always. I mean, code was just a means of solving a problem. But I was always more interested in figuring out what the problem was that we were actually solving and try to come up with ways of solving that. And that didn't always have to be software. But what actually prompted it was that my boss sent us to a 3-day training in testing essentials or something like that. And we went into the meeting like 10 developers, everyone sitting like this, like, I'm not going to test, I'm a developer. And I came out from the first day and this was my calling. I went straight to my boss and I said, this is what I'm going to do from now on.
So what sort of software were you working on as a developer?
I was a consultant for the major part of those years, but almost exclusively in insurance. So insurance has kind of been my home until this year when I went into media, which is really weird. They have MacBooks and stuff.
MacBooks and stuff, magic. So that's you're going from a very algorithmic driven process into a more creative side of it, I'm guessing.
Have I?
I don't know. I'm genuinely curious. I've worked on it on the insurance side, and it seemed to me to be very much driven by a formulaic side, and then the media side of it, and the underlying principles are algorithmic, but there's that creative element to media, if you like. I don't know why I'm doing this a lot, by the way.
Well, yes. So I would say the biggest shift has been that in insurance, the focus is always, it has to be right.
Yeah.
And in media, it's more like it has to be in production. So yes, but we always had very, very much creative freedom in the companies that I worked for.
Okay, cool. That's cool. I'll ask one more question, and because I don't want to monopolize it, I'll give Viv a chance to speak. So I picked out specific sentences from your essay because I thought they were really interesting to me. Where you say you got with 10 years of different testing roles, and my question is, if you can remember the first day you identified as a tester being distinct from a developer, can you remember what that day was like?
I can, because as I said, I left that training saying that I wanted to move into testing. So what my boss actually did was she set me up with a mentor who was a very experienced test lead, and they put us on a project.
Yeah, so the follow-up to my question before Viv speaks, Lena, was that first day as a dedicated tester, my follow-up to that was going to be, did you notice a difference in the way that your colleagues perceived you?
Yes, because I switched from one product in the company to another. But no, because I think I was kind of high on the power part of being a tester. So I think they would have had to hit me on the head with kind of looking down on me for me to even notice it. I think it was years later that I realized that people actually saw testing as something beneath development, because it never occurred to me.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because as they teach computer science degrees in college, university, but the testing element of these courses, these degrees are really, really small. I think it's a deficiency in the system, because it seems like a culture shock when developers come into the workplace and they meet people like us, and all of a sudden they're confronted by this demon that insists that they write stuff from a quality standpoint, and then you have to coach, I'm guessing, you know, this into them.
Yeah. So I'm just interested. So I can't find the question I wrote down, but I can sort of remember it ad lib. When I was a developer, I remember that I'd have certain biases and things that, you know, I'd always just think of how I'm going to get the thing done in the best way possible. And then when you go to sort of software testing, it is about getting the thing done the best way possible, but it's a different sort of mindset. I'm just interested how you sort of were able to sort of get yourself from, I'm going to just create this thing to, I'm going to test this thing, like how you found that. And
I think that's the thing, that the companies that I worked for as a developer, and that community, because I worked in a very obscure language called Progress Open Edge, and I've realized the developers had a very different mindset from a lot of other developers. So for me, it wasn't a big shift, because that's the way we had always done our code. And for me, the big shock was moving into, and I apologize beforehand to all web developers out there, when I moved into testing web applications and people didn't have that mindset. Because when I was testing my old colleagues' work, it was always, if you found something, it was because you were doing really, really good testing. But when I started testing other kind of applications, it was almost impossible not to find bugs, because the developers didn't have that mindset. So I think that was the big kind of shock for me. It wasn't moving into testing.
So how did you go about combating that, finding them later on in the cycle? How did you manage to start shifting it?
I'm honestly not sure if I ever did. The basic for the article that I wrote for the book is actually from a talk that I did at a conference in Sweden about bug advocacy and moving my transition from kind of a larger version of my article. And I talk a lot about the different stages I was in, because I went in, my first junior testing stage was basically proving that I had the power to force the developers to make changes. And that's the way I thought I was supposed to work when I started. So I think I didn't make many friends in those first projects, because I was really nitpicky. I was, if someone didn't fix my bugs, I would just pester them until they did. As I said, I was kind of high on the power part. And I think it wasn't until I learned how to be a team player that they started to do what I said, because they actually trusted me, and not because I would not let them be until they just did what I told them to.
Yeah.
But I think as for learning how to coach developers, that was a lot of years later.
So how do you go about getting the buy-in? I think that term of buy-in to what you're selling.
I try to always be a good example myself. So if I show them that my way of working is more efficient and will improve the quality and lower the cost, and it won't take more hours just because they let me test early and test a lot. I think that's the only way I've found to do it.
Yeah, I love that. Because again, from the book, you say often testers lament that developers don't care about quality. I think that's a massively valid statement. But I don't think it tells the whole story. So, and I've actually written down, I love this statement. And then I've written, is there any one thing that testers can do to get developers on board from your perspective? And then one.
Bring them cookies. No, I mean relationships. It's about relationships. And yes, bringing them cookies is actually very effective. No, but it's about showing them that you are a part of the team and you see yourself as part of the team. You see yourself more of a service than someone pointing with their finger and telling them what to do.
Yeah, I get that. So what motivates you? I know it's probably a horrible question, right? What motivates anybody? Pay, that's good. Salary is good. That motivates a lot of people. But in terms of you as a QA, as a tester, what motivates you?
Seeing the stuff that I do being useful to someone, and it sounds really, really corny, but the best thing that I have experienced is when you talk to customer support and they tell you that something you did actually means that they have less calls.
Yeah, that's
really
cool,
the
right?
best feeling. Customer support, they are my heroes.
And in the same vein, what demotivates you?
When I don't understand why we are doing something.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, I understand that.
I can totally do things that I don't agree with if someone tells me why they think is the right way.
Yeah, and do you find that the things that demotivate you, the attitudes towards you as a QA, do you find it changes as you go up and down the organization structure?
Definitely. It's one of the best parts of when I transitioned to management, is that suddenly I can actually make stuff happen on a larger scale, and not just the stuff that I want to be done, but I can actually elevate other people that I see struggle in the way that I struggled when I was just a tester, to have my voice heard in the bigger picture, or when I was trying to convince someone that there was a risk and other people didn't see it, I can suddenly, as a manager, I can actually translate that gut feeling of something being a risk to a business case that management will actually buy. So yeah. Definitely, I wish it wasn't. I wish everyone was always listened to and always believed, but that's not how it has been in the companies I've been, at least.
Yeah. So as an ex-dev, I keep referring to you as an ex-dev now. How do you, and you've got one foot in the other side, if you like. You got one foot in that side, because you'll never kind of get rid of that dev side of you. It's part of who you are. But how do you deal? I don't know if you've ever come across some superstar devs who.
Yes.
How do what's your approach to dealing with a superstar dev, as opposed to, you can talk to a dev and you see the light bulb in their head and it goes on and you think, great, this is going to be relatively easy. So how do you deal with those people, those other people? Does it help?
Most of the time, those aren't the problem, because they will listen to if you switch from being one of the team to I'm in a position where I can force you to do this, they will listen to that. I think the biggest issue is the people who are in between, that you can't figure out what drives them, what will motivate them. Yeah. Because I think I wrote about that in an article. As soon as you know how to get through to someone, that's easy. And this may sound like I'm great at manipulating people, and maybe I am, but I think what I'm actually good at is figuring out how to convince people. And I think that's what sets someone apart from going from being good at something to being great at someone is actually being able to switch and adapt. So just as we switch testing techniques depending on our context, we switch our methods of convincing people.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
but I mean, there are people where you just have to say, I was writing code when you were in diapers. I know what I'm talking about. And then there are other people where you can work with them in another way.
Yeah, well, you touched upon it, the manipulation. I don't think it's too cruel to say you manipulate. You do, but in a kind way. It's a bit of social engineering, if you like, because no two people are ever going to be the same, and you've got to find this particular. If they like cookies, for example, you're going to bring them lots of cookies to do what you want. But I just think I think it's a really good skill to have, and it's a really good skill to be aware of, because that's how, once you get past over the initial hurdle, as Lena says, once they start seeing results, they're more likely to come on the journey with you.
Yeah,
I think. But the real skill, and the skill that Lena obviously nailed, is just getting over that initial hurdle. And yeah, I think it's pretty awesome.
But I mean, you can't win everyone. There are people where we just had to agree never to work again together. But I mean, most people will start to at least respect you when you show that you are honest and you actually do things with good intentions.
Yeah, it's very brave though, because you're constantly having to put yourself out there, you know, and there's that fear of rejection as well, I'm guessing. I struggle with fear of rejection because I want everybody to like me, but at the same time, we're going towards this common goal, but there's only so many times you can try and win a person around.
Yeah.
Right, and at some point, it's knowing when to cut the cord, I guess.
Yeah.
So how do you feel when that happens? Do you feel like you've done the best job you can, or do you think I'll come back around, I'll give it a few days or something, I'll come back around, or is it a point where you go, no more, I'm done.
Yeah, there are lost causes where you just give up. But I guess there's not a straight answer to that. There are people where you can sense that we can get along if we just let this cool down for a few days or a few hours, or we can't agree on this particular problem, but we can like each other anyway, and we can respect each other, and we can have different opinions. But there have definitely been people where I was just, I'm not going to work with this person because it's not good for them, it's not good for me.
Yeah, it can become quite toxic sometimes, I think. So if you had to encapsulate some traits of the best developers you've ever worked with, you could even give them a name check if you want. What are the best traits for a developer from a QA perspective, from a test perspective, that makes it really easy to work with them?
If the most amazing experience I had with a developer was where I came with an issue that I had found, and I have kind of I often feel kind of bad when I find bugs, because I mean I like that I found them, but I don't like that I have to tell someone that I found something. But there's a guy called Thomas that I worked with a couple of years back, and the first time I came with something that I was like, I'm really sorry, I know this is kind of an edge case, it's kind of weird, I'm not sure if we need to fix it, this is what I did. And he responded with just, oh, that's amazing, show me, how did you do that? Those are the good ones, where they can see that what I'm doing is valuable and it's not personal criticism.
Yeah.
So if you condense that, it's probably the ability to distance yourself and your value as a person from finding issues in your code.
That's the problem, isn't it, I guess, is that a lot of people from sort of, I've experienced it both as a tester and as a developer, for some reason it shouldn't be, but people do take it personally. And I've experienced it as a tester. I've felt where you get these, I guess, kind of rock star devs, it can be quite a prickly subject when you find an issue. But also as a developer, you don't want to, you always feel, or at least I felt, I was always trying to do the best I could. So if somebody then sort of, try not to swear, came over and found an issue and it wasn't something that I was quite happy with because I thought I'd done a really good job, it can be tricky, you know, to try and, I think it's even like a common, it's probably asked in the last 2 interviews I've had, how do you deal with finding a problem with the developer's code? You know, it's a tricky subject.
It's the other way around as well, because I've worked with a lot of testers, QAs, whatever you call them, that took it very personally if they missed something. And I mean, that also happens. We can't catch everything. So as a tester, it's very important to have that distance as well, that you could have missed something. It could be bad. It could be something that you should have found. But the important thing is, how do you make sure you don't make that mistake again? So that's back to the continuous improvement. I don't care about whose fault something was. I do care about trying to get better. So if we have someone who just, it's a bug, it happened, and then they don't care, they don't try to improve, that's really frustrating to me. But if they make extremely stupid mistakes, but they never do it again, then stuff happens.
So just going back to that point you made, so if you miss something and then you say you want to make sure this never happens again, what's your process for trying to mitigate the chances of you missing that again? Do you follow a process, or is it just a mental note?
I probably follow a process, but not one that I'm aware of. I try to figure out what did we miss? What test could have found this? What could we have done to find this? What was our reasoning behind not doing that? Was it that we didn't know? Was it that we didn't have time? We didn't feel the risk was big enough? Where did we make kind of a root cause analysis of us missing it? And then I like checklists, so I do checklists for basically everything. Yeah.
So are you working in an agile, I say agile, and I'll use air quotes, are you working in an agile team at the moment? Or do you manage the agile team at the moment? Because you're management now, right? So
yes.
Sorry, so there's 2 questions. I'll answer
right
that.
Now, right now, I'm engineering manager for basically, I would say, 3 teams. And one of the 3 teams I work closer with. So I'm a bit more involved, but I don't have time to do hands-on testing in those teams because there are way too many people that I have to coach and help with stuff, and strategic meetings and meetings about how do we get desks and chair home to people in Corona time, and
important stuff. I'd make everybody stand up.
Yep.
That'll keep them focused.
I think that's against Swedish law, but I mean, otherwise it's a valid solution.
I thought it was all the rage with the stand-up desk that you find, along with not wearing socks at the office, but you know, that might be the offices I've been to. But my second question was, you kind of answered it anyway, was do you get a chance to do the hands-on testing, and how do you manage to keep on top, to keep your edge sharp, if you like?
Well, no, I don't, not anymore. I have too many people reporting to me right now. What I try to do is try to get it through mentoring. So I have junior testers and I try to mentor them. So I have them do the hands-on testing, and I can tell them what they did wrong. That's awesome.
So that makes sense. And another question I meant to ask at the start, because I've gone in reverse chronological order now. When you were a dev, did you have testers ever coming up to you with defects? I'm guessing so.
We had people from the business side of the company doing our testing. So yes, but not someone who had like the role tester, because we were the first in the company. So
And can you remember how you reacted to finding out that there were possible, let's call them deficiencies in your code?
I'm sure there were instances of me getting annoyed because I take pride in quality, but I think most of the time we worked together as a team. It was a really good team at the kind of the last years as a developer.
And
I can't think of a time where I was like really upset with it.
I can't imagine you ever getting really upset.
Oh, yes.
Actually, I'll take that back. So the teams that you manage at the moment, what's their kind of makeup? Are they siloed, or do they work in a pod, if you like?
We work in domains, so they are cross-functional teams within a domain, but the domain kind of bleeds into each other. So I would say both.
Okay. So how do you manage? So you do the coaching bit. How do you manage your coaching sessions with the guys and the girls on the teams?
Most of them don't require coaching in that sense. They need more help with setting development goals and how do I move my career forward. But the easy ones are the testers, because then you can just, this is what I did and I'm awesome, so this must be the right way.
I was just sorry. I can hear my wife pumping up a bloody swimming pool out the garden. I'm sorry for the noise if you can hear it. Totally knocked me for 6 seconds. It's just ridiculous.
It's so first world problem.
This is the problem with self-isolation. I can hear everything in this window. Sorry if you can hear it as well.
This stuff is gold, by the way. Why from your essay, you say, while you're at it, learn what objections different people will use and prepare to overcome them. And then you have a list. Did you remember the list? I don't know if you remember back to when you wrote the thing, but you got a list of objections. Did you remember those from memory, or did you have to think back to certain situations?
Well, I had that talk that I could pick them from.
That's just too easy an answer. You could at least put some thought into this, right?
Sorry.
I've got an eidetic memory or something, right? Eidetic memory. That's cool. So a question, what's one thing about Sweden people should know, but they always get wrong?
We don't have polar bears in the streets.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, let's. I'm going to ask you 3 or 4 questions. 1 or 2 with answers. You can explain if you want, or you don't have to if you don't have to. Okay, you okay with this, Viv?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Question number 1: who would win a fight, an ostrich or a kangaroo?
Logically, I would assume kangaroos, because they are freaking terrible. They seem like they can break down mountains, so I would say kangaroos.
I was expecting you to say I had a run-in with a kangaroo once and it left me tired. Okay. Do you have pets?
No.
If you could have any pet in the world and the choice was between a crocodile, a crocodile and a tiger, which would you have? Tiger. Why?
Because at least they are cute.
They probably make a great guard tiger.
Should watch Tiger King. You bite people's arms off.
I haven't seen a thing about that, but I was thinking that if a tiger can chase a burglar, but if you ever look at a crocodile, they got little stumpy legs, right? They'd be useless, wouldn't they, at chasing somebody?
Also, they are, I mean, an animal that will trap you underwater and eat you weeks later.
You put way too much thought into this. That's awesome. And the final question. Where is it? Where is it? You can have one superpower. What would it be?
I already have a superpower. I'm a tester.
You can have one superpower that isn't being a tester.
They are all pretty horrible, aren't they? There are drawbacks to every superpower. Being able to eat anything.
I never had that on my list. That's brilliant. I was thinking you were going to come up with something like, I'd like to be able to remote control people so I could get them to do this whole superstar dev thing. Wouldn't even be a problem in my world, right? But the whole eat anything is just awesome. I'm just thinking, do we get in touch with Marvel, the Marvel universe now, and say we want to pitch you this idea for a new Marvel superhero, right? There's this lady.
I'm convinced that there is a superhero with this superpower somewhere. There's got to be.
Probably.
Just wonder what the benefit is. Like, did you know, if Thanos turned up on Earth, would you just challenge into an eating contest, right? So
I would eat him.
You could be stuck in a situation like, have you seen the film, is it Cloudy with a Hint of Meatballs? Where like food just starts raining down. Somebody's going to have to get rid of all the food, otherwise it's a mess. So
I was thinking more that I actually got to eat stuff because I like eating.
I got genuine tears in my eyes. Thanks for that.
I'm very sorry I broke your friend, Viv.
That's brilliant. And there ends the quickfire round. I just want to thank you, Lena. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I've learned so much in the past 40 minutes. I really appreciate it. And again, I do love your essay in the book. And next time Viv asks you, if you want to write a 2,500 word piece, ignore him. Just write, because I'll eat this stuff up. See what I did there? It's my superpower.
Perhaps you've got a blog post or blog that you want to share.
Yes, actually, I have a blog called testing.pagan.se, I think. And I made a promise around, I wonder if it was in November or December, that I would write a blog post each day, 3 times a week to cover a card game that I've designed around testing. And I got through about half of them before I couldn't make one 3 times a week. But soon it will be done, and I can move on to other topics, finally.
3 times a week?
Yes.
Wow, so you don't really set yourself low bars then?
Yeah, but I figured I had the topics because I had the different cards.
Yeah.
So it would be easy because it's just telling stories. But then at some point they started blending into each other, and I couldn't really separate them from each other.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks again for spending time with us, and hopefully speak soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Lena.
Thank you
Really appreciate it.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
This evening.
Bye.